when you talk about Indiana Jones, people usually break down into two different camps. People either love Raiders of the Lost Ark or they love Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. They typically love both, but usually there's a fight that breaks out between which is the better film. It's one or the other. And then there's Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. What do we make of this film? This incredibly dark, troublesome, problematic movie that we love, but makes us feel all kinds of weird inside. That's what we're talking about today. Hey, everybody, this is Jason Herbert. I am the host and creator of Historians of the Movies podcast, and every single week we are talking about movies and the histories behind them. And this week we are talking about Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I have struggled today as I thought about how to create this introduction for you about this film and how do we think about it. And the best I could think about Temple of Doom is really it's that middle child, isn't it? Right? It's the one that gets in trouble. It's not the good kid, the studious kid that is Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's not the golden child that is Last Crusade. No, Temple of Doom, it's darker, right? It begs for attention in its own way. When it doesn't get attention, it goes out and misbehaves. Temple of Doom is definitely going to jail and probably rehab for a few different times. And I'm thinking about this film and our conversation today, talking about just that. And of course, if we're going to extend these discussions about Temple of Doom, what then do we make of the other two Indiana Jones films? How do we think about Crystal Skull or Dial of Destiny? My guess is maybe there's the step siblings that you get after mom goes to Cancun with her boss, and all of a sudden they're coming back in, and these are your new brothers, and you're supposed to treat them like equals. I don't quite know how to feel about Crystal Skull or Dial of Destiny, although we've got podcasts coming on them down the road. But today we're going to talk about Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And since this film is a sequel, technically even a prequel, we thought that this would be a lot of fun to bring back on the three amazing scholars who were back on for our first episode of Indiana Jones for Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I'm talking about my dear friends, my sisters, Kate Sheppard, Julie Troche, and Leah Packard-Grams. These are three of my favorite people on the planet. So the conversation you're going to hear today is talking about our love affair with Indiana Jones, the icky feelings maybe sometimes that Temple of Doom gives us, the ups and downs of this film, its strengths, its weaknesses, and everything else in between. So I hope you enjoy this pod. It's a lot of fun. It's for me talking to three of my best friends on the planet. Hold on, guys, because Temple of Doom is next on Historians of the Movies podcast. I know I said some. Okay, so for those of you listening now, what you should know is that you're not just listening to four scholars. You're listening. What do we call ourselves? A super chat dream? What's the name? Super chat
dream team.
That's it.
Dream team. Yeah.
Okay, so the last time you heard the four of us together, I was getting to know the three of these amazing scholars before us, and then we came together like popcorn jelly beans. I don't know what the prop. I like popcorn jelly.
I don't like jelly beans.
What?
Like chocolate and peanut butter?
Oh, I could do that.
Oh no! Now we're breaking up.
Like four good friends. Like four best friends.
Okay, four best friends because we were
like four peas in a pod.
The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pant.
I love that movie, and the book.
Yeah, but isn't Blake Lively having a bad moment? Seems like the PR is really kind of turning against her.
I don't know.
Like, right? It seems like maybe
America Ferrera. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, love her.
Okay.
Love her. And we just did Barbie on the watch party some time ago. And then we did La La Land recently, and Barbie came up, and then I had to be like, I thought, what you don't like La La Land?
You know my opinion on La La Land.
She doesn't like it. No, it's too romantic.
La La Land. It's not.
Oh, right, you heartless. Yeah.
Any movie that can make you throw the television outside the window in the last 10 minutes. And that's what La La La. It just, the whirlwind gut punch of that last 10 minutes is so hard.
Yeah.
It's the worst, most brutal montage I think I've ever seen in a film. Anyway, so we're back. And one of the things we decided, so we've done other pods since the last time we were all together. Yeah. Kate came on, we did Alien. Julia, we did Stargate. And Leah wrote some things because she's still. Why haven't you been?
She's just writing all the time. She's very productive. I know.
I guess
she just had a piece come out.
I saw that. I liked it.
I know.
So welcome back, friends. You guys want to introduce yourself? I'll call on you to introduce yourselves, and you can tell us who you are, what you're doing here, and what your beverage of choice is today, just like last time. All right, Kate Sheppard.
I'm Kate Sheppard. I am a historian of Egyptology, and my book, Women in the Valley of the Kings, is just above Jason's head. Bingo. Leah's showing it. It's behind me on my little shelf over here.
We all have them. Julia has it too.
You guys, see, this is what I'm talking about.
Because we are actually the kings. See, that's what this is the Valley of the Kings right here.
Yes, right here. Okay. We're right here. And then I finished off my Boda box of.
You drink box wine.
Oh, I love it.
Okay.
It lasts for so long. And like, if I buy a bottle and I don't drink it all in like one weekend, then it goes bad. You know what I mean? That's a lot of pressure. So I just buy a box.
I'll just drink the whole bottle because I'm committed. But
you are.
Yes. All right. Julia?
Hey, I'm Julia Troche. I'm an Egyptologist, a PhD in Egyptology from one of the few places you can get that. And now I teach history and world history and ancient history at Missouri State University. And I am on a campaign to bring faculty, to get faculty more involved into our campus athletics. So I was just at our Lady Bears game, and our women's basketball is just chef's kiss, doing amazing.
Nice.
Leah?
Hi, my name is Leah Packard Grams. I'm a graduate student at the University of California, Berkeley, and I am currently writing my PhD dissertation about some ancient Egyptian papyri, which I'm very excited about. My primary field for my PhD exams was Egypt, but my secondary field, and you might not know this, but my secondary field for my PhD exams is actually Central Asia and Central Asian archaeology. So I am super excited to talk about the Temple of Doom today with you, Jason, and Kate and Julia as well. Amazing.
Okay, so I have to tell the audience right now why we're doing this episode, which is shortly after we recorded Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I saw the other day is our number 7 most downloaded episode on this podcast.
Nice.
All right, it needs to get higher. Right? Let's do it.
I think so too. I get an email or a message from Leah. Dear Dr. Herbert, I sure would like to do Temple of Doom, and here's why. Like, I've studied this, and I'm like,
she knows.
Who's Dr. Herbert? Right? I was
you are Dr. Herbert because you earned that PhD.
Mm-hmm.
I think, gosh,
and her advisors are teaching her correctly.
They
Start off professional.
You do the thing, and then let them. Right. Yes. So if you're listening in and you are a graduate student or maybe you are an undergrad or something like that, basically the idea is you always start with a title, right? Professor or doctor, right, is preferred, and then allow that person to say, hey, it's cool, and let them say, hey, you can call me by my first name or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And so forth. For me, and I don't know.
Now you're Jason, or things that can't be aired on podcasts.
Yeah, you guys know the things. You guys know like and that was another thing I was about talking to you guys as we withered in. It's like, okay, because I was the last addition to this group. And then it was like, okay, I have 3 new best friends and they're all women. What's on the table? And then I found out everything's on the table. So there.
With us, everything is yes.
Yes.
Like
and no, listeners, you were not on the table. Yeah, very much so. So
reverse, yeah.
All right. So, and here's the thing. We have this film, and then there were actually 3 other Indiana Jones movies.
I'm so excited for the others because this, spoiler alert, is a low point.
Oh.
Yeah, it is a low point.
Is it worse than Crystal Skull?
I don't know. I might need to watch Crystal Skull again to be sure. I thought I hated Crystal Skull more. And then I watched it not that long ago and was like, oh, this isn't as bad as I remembered. And then I just watched Temple of Doom, and it's bad.
It's really bad.
Yeah, I was watching this the other night. I remember I texted you guys. I was like, hey, I was like 5 minutes, and it's like, hey guys, this movie's pretty good.
This is actually great. And I was like,
and then I stopped texting you as I tried to figure out how to take that back.
I noticed
the next
that.
2 hours.
Yeah.
I was like,
and I apologize. I didn't say this is, I'm drinking a gin and tonic because of imperialism.
Okay. I am drinking because it's 3:49 p.m. my time. So it's still early and we have to do the watch party tonight. We're doing Zulu for those of you. We're recording this on February 16th. I'm drinking many beers today because it's been a week. All right. So it's been a week, right? It's like, just everybody look around. There's probably a reason for you to drink tonight. All right. Well, you guys would jump into this film?
So
yeah, let's do it.
All right. First, and before we jump into the whole thing, what do you remember the first time you saw this movie? Like, what's your relationship to Temple of Doom?
I don't remember the first time that I saw it, but I do know that, I mean, you have the visceral connections to the dinner scene, which we'll talk about. And then being from Missouri, I wasn't born here, but I was raised here from, I guess, the age of 5 or 6. So when I saw this movie and at the end, you know, Willie says, I'm going back to Missouri where blah, 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 blah. So Missouri, like growing up in Kansas City, like it was it's a small market. It's all of that. But like now people from Kansas City, it's like, you know, they're from Kansas City because of the Chiefs or the Royals or whatever. But back then, no, that wasn't the case. So when she said, I'm going back to Missouri, I remember being like, wow, there's somebody from Missouri in a film. You know what I mean? Like, or it's at least fictionalized that she's from that place. And so those are the two main things I remember seeing it the first time.
Yeah, I forgot about the Missouri part because I didn't live in Missouri until recently, and the last like 7 years, I guess that's recent. And then I got really excited about the Missouri part because it's, you know, you want to get excited about something with Missouri. I saw it when I was a kid and I don't remember having a very strong reaction to it. I remember Raiders so much more. And the third one so much more. And this is just for some reason, I remember the heart being pulled out of the chest. Like that was the scene for me, and still might be like the greatest scene, but we can get into that. So I don't have a lot of nostalgia for this movie.
Julia, were you born after this film came out? Because this film comes out in 1984, right?
Yeah,
so
I'm 86.
You were born just after. Right, okay.
And Leah definitely was.
Why you got to do that to Leah? Leah
and I are the millennials.
Leah out herself.
Leah and I are the millennials of this call.
All right, go on. Leah, what's your relationship to this film?
The first time I saw this movie, I rented it from Movie Gallery on VHS in probably 2006, 2007. And Please Be Kind, Rewind. And I don't have such a visceral memory around this film. Like, I think I want to echo what Julia said about how it didn't leave that big of an impression on me, other than another Indiana Jones, action, adventure, and fun. And I, you know, being a young aspiring archaeologist, I think I enjoyed it very much. And didn't really look back. I grew up in Maine, which is actually, as of a couple of years ago, it was the whitest state in the United States, actually.
Wow. More than Vermont?
Yeah. At least these stats might not be up to date, but at some point in the recent years, it has been the whitest state in the United States.
I love Maine. Such a white guy.
White guy. Well, it's also very
so
white. It's also literally white in Maine because of all the snow we get. It was only later when I rewatched this movie in high school and in college that I started to sort of question some of the stereotypes that are perpetuated within this film, and also sort of started questioning Dr. Jones's motivations for his actions. Especially with the diamond and the remains of Nurhaci, and eventually the stone. So,
yeah.
So I was born in 1977. This film comes out when I'm 7. My very first film I saw in a theater was Return of the Jedi, which comes out a year before this. And I think in a lot of ways there's this comparison between the two trilogies, Star Wars and Indiana Jones, because this and Jedi are the two weaker of the things. And I kept thinking this. I was watching
watch your
this,
mouth. I love Jedi. I
also love
Jedi,
but Jedi compares to Empire, which is the greatest film ever made.
Great,
ever.
Sure, but A New Hope is also so boring.
How dare you speak of Alec Guinness this way?
Julia, bring it back. All right, let's bring it back.
Just like anger right now. But I don't recall seeing this at the theater. But I remember like it was like on Showtime or something like that. It was like one of those things where you just were kind of aware of it as I was growing up with the kids, right? And there were always these glimpses, and this was like on the rotation. I remember like watching this, Goonies, stuff like that. In the 80s on tape. It would be on HBO or whatever. We'd tape it off of HBO or off of Showtime, and then you could watch it whenever. And as a kid, it was a scary one. And we had to wait till 89 until Crusade comes out. So remember, most of my childhood and Kate's childhood, we have 2 Indiana Jones films.
Mm-hmm.
We have Raiders and we have this until we're like 12. And that's what we got.
From Gen X. Thank you for that perspective.
Yeah. That's the only sense of caring that we actually have is like the fact that we only there. That we don't really leave us alone and let us listen to Alice in Chains. But I didn't think about, for the longest time, I was like, yeah, this is just the darker of the film. And as I got older, then you start to read the critiques. I'm like, nah, it's fine. It's just a bunch of liberal professors. I'm a liberal professor, but it's like complaining about this. I'm like, and then you watch it, you're like, oh, I don't think it does a lot of good. This film does some good stuff, but it's got its issues here. So, before we jump into the many myriad issues, let's do the compliment sandwich. We're doing an Indiana Jones compliment sandwich. Okay. Let's start with our favorite parts of this film. Like, Kate Sheppard, what's your single favorite thing about this movie?
Okay, you guys already know the answer to this.
The listeners do not. They're not.
The listeners don't. I know, but
we've been getting your thirst trap gifts lately. Trap.
Okay, it's Harrison Ford. Okay, and here's what happens. He starts off in a tuxedo. All right.
Then, a very beautiful tuxedo.
Extremely beautiful tuxedo. They make it to the airplane. He changes back into his Dr. Jones costume.
Superhero outfit.
Then they get to the palace, right? Pankot Palace. And then somehow he has tweed and his glasses. Fantastic shift of costume. And then after all the adventures and they're on the bridge and he's about to chop the bridge, sweaty Indiana Jones. I mean, the way that the costume changes throughout, of course, and just demonstrating that he's just really tough and strong there at the end. So those are some of my favorites. The costumes that he has to go through for sure.
Julie, what you got?
I love all of the horror elements of this movie. So I grew up loving horror. And so that's why this movie has a little bit probably a fonder place in my repertoire than maybe some others, or than some other people have feelings towards this movie, because I really, really love the horror elements. And there's a lot, the bugs, and, there's a lot of just like sort of creepy crawlies, and there's, hearts being pulled out of chests. And it's just, there's some fantastic horror elements going on there that I appreciate. And then I have to say, just like Short Rounds. I mean, just such a fantastic, he is the hero. I will say that he is the hero of this movie.
Big time.
And I love his acting. I love this actor in stuff he's done as a kid and now more recently. Mm-hmm. And I just think Short Round brings such sort of levity and sincerity and beauty to this movie, and the relationship is so beautiful. And what is otherwise maybe a fairly weak film in terms of the relationships that are built throughout, the Short Round Indy Jones relationship is just really, really actually compelling.
Yeah.
Indy, I love you.
Oh, I know, you're my best friend, Indy.
Oh, I know. Oh, we're a Short Round dialogue is coming.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll get deep dive in Short Round.
Leah?
My favorite part of this movie is the very end, because I believe that it is possible that this movie actually does say something really meaningful, actually. After all of these chase scenes, the minecart, the volcano, the everything, ultimately Indiana Jones gives the artifact back to the indigenous population. And we could have a conversation about that a little bit later.
Yeah, I absolutely want to do that. I'm going to pop in here on my own podcast and talk about this. We've done a lot of movies on the Watch Party over the last 6.5 years with like the greatest stars, Newman and Redford and all these people. And as I'm watching this film, and I'm actually going to piggyback off of Kate, I don't think there is another man ever captured on film more handsome than Harrison Ford in this film. This movie itself, starting with the tux, moving to the tweed with the glasses, and then finally, like, if I could be one human for a day and just walk around being this person, God is my witness. Let me be Harrison Ford, shirt ripped open with a sword on the bridge, sweaty. Like, I want to be that
on all
guy.
Sides, in danger, above marsh crocodiles in India.
In film, like, it's over. I'm sorry, Paul Newman. I'm sorry, Robert Redford. I'm sorry, Brad Pitt. Anybody else? It's done. Harrison Ford, Temple of Doom, best looking human being alive ever on film. End of question. Like, I don't think it's even close. It's one of those things where it's like women want to be with him and men want to be him. And this is the thing where every kid growing up wanted to be Indiana Jones, right?
Very true.
And I think that this is the film that really, I mean, obviously he's perfect in Raiders. I think Raiders is the best of them all. I think Raiders is a perfect film. And I think Crusade is also a perfect film. This is not a perfect film, but it's got a lot of really cool elements to it. So that's my favorite part. I have other favorites of this. Short Round, obviously part of that relationship. I want to jump in though. This film, I didn't know this growing up. This movie's a prequel. To Raiders.
Yep.
Well, because how do you have a love interest without Marion? You can't have Indy break up
Julia,
with
I've
Marion.
had a lot of lovers. It's fine. You just do what you want.
But he does break up with Marion because he gets Elsa Schneider in so.
Well, I mean,
and they talk about
spoilers.
this in the other films.
Yes.
Oh, if you haven't seen Raiders, if you haven't seen these films by now, how dare you? Like, just turn off the thing. All right.
Turn it off. Go watch them. Wait,
here's a real question. Sorry, side question. Kate, have you seen the most recent one yet? The Dial of Destiny, finally?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Who made you? I made you.
You totally did. And I'm actually in the middle of watching it again because of all the winter weather and I have to be on the treadmill. And I'm like, I love this movie. I'm going to watch it.
I actually like it. I'm looking forward to talking about Dial of Destiny.
I like it too.
Oh, yeah. I like it a lot.
But, okay. So it's a prequel, but then, it's a prequel. So then what happens to Willie, right? Because then you go, all right, now we've got Willie is replaced by Marion. So what happens?
But we're not sad that Willie's gone. No one's upset.
We're happy Willie's gone.
Willie's
the worst part of this film.
She moved to Missouri. She's happy in Missouri.
Quit it.
No, she does. Well, she goes back to Hollywood, right?
She must go back to Japan. She said she had a little apartment. It had a garden and she loved it. And she had friends and they went to parties.
Well, then she went there and
she went back to Japan.
Yeah.
There's a picture of her on Indy's desk in one of the sequels.
Really?
Where she had sent, look for it. I think I don't know if it's Crystal Skull or if it's Dial of Destiny. Look for it. It's on his desk, like a signed image of her from Hollywood. Like, dear Indy, love Willie or whatever. Like, she's gone on to do her thing, right?
That was an amicable breakup. We're okay with it.
Okay.
They're not supposed to be together forever, and that's the lesson, everybody. Okay. In fact, you don't have to watch the movie now. But here's my issue with prequels. It's always hard for me to buy because we age over time, and even though this film comes out very shortly afterwards, you still notice he's just a little bit older. You could just tell when you watch.
Kate's making a face.
No, I'm making a face because I said she went back to Japan and I apologize. They were in Shanghai, not Japan. They were in China. My bad. I apologize. Right. Sorry. Now continue. Okay. Sorry.
It's hard for me to accept prequels with the same actors and things like that. It's just difficult. But we open up in 1935 in Shanghai, right? One of the things I like is that Short Round is not the only buddy of Indiana's, right? Mm-hmm. And here's one of the things I like. Wuhan gets killed early on, but here's what I love about this, right? Mm-hmm. We don't know that backstory. It's just there, and it's for us to fill in the blanks. We just
It's
know that they ran on
beautiful.
some adventure. Yeah,
I
love that.
Honestly, that is the okay. So the intro, I have very opinionated opinions about the introduction. I hate the music number. It reminds me of the ending of Blazing Saddles. It reminds me of like a Mel Brooks like satire. I don't watch an Indie Jones movie for its dance sequences. Nevertheless, I love the idea that we are just thrown into the middle, really the tail
Right.
end of an adventure, that then throws us into another one. Like I love like that storytelling.
Yes.
I think is actually really beautiful.
How can you not like the musical number?
It's so bad.
I can't tell if that's sarcastic
It's
or
anything
not.
goes in Chinese, okay? What?
Sure.
That's amazing. And her dress. Hello.
If we know anything about Spielberg and Lucas, is that they are in love with the earlier generations of film, right?
Mhm.
So very much Indy's Tux to me is calling upon Bogart.
Oh, very much
and
so.
And things like that. And I think you're absolutely right. I think that one of the weaknesses of Lucas, as he goes on as a filmmaker, is that he tries to explain everything to everybody. And Julia, you're absolutely right. What's fun is going, oh, I don't know, but there's something here.
What's the
right?
What happened with that diamond? Why does he want it? Why are they fighting over it? Yeah.
And I also love that it gives us Rick Young, who is like my favorite henchman ever. I adore him in Alias, and then more recently I just rewatched Transporter, and fell in love with him again. He is like such a great villain. And so like I love that, and I love just the whole scene of the table turn, like literally the tables turning. Him downing the martini in one gulp, like just a freaking lush. There's just so many wonderful things about that opening scene that are not a dance sequence.
Leo, you're making faces.
I'm always making faces. I'm always
okay. That's good. No, it's So I messaged you guys the other day. It was like I low key love this movie because I'm in love with the visuals in this opening part.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
the visuals. If you're watching this movie, you're thinking, "Holy shit, they've done it again." Right?
Because she walks right. She walks right through the title slide.
Oh yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah,
that is pretty good.
And because in the first one, like in Raiders, the Paramount Mountain, they had to find one. This time they could actually just make it into a gong. So they were kind of doing that same thing, is what I noticed. But I know that Leah had something to say.
Oh no. Speaking of that gong, how it detaches and starts to roll around, and they're shooting at him, and the lazy Susan around the table, and the music around it. It's these sorts of features that remind us why we love Indiana Jones, and yet it is so saturated with these racist tropes and caricatures,
which is why think about Indiana Jones. It's true though. When you think about adventure film, Indiana is these are the adventure films. Like there are other action films or there are other horror films or whatever, but like this is the template for adventure films, right? It is. Did any of you pay attention to the name of the club in which they're at in Shanghai?
Yes, of course.
No.
Obi-Wan.
Oh, sorry. Obi-Wan? I thought it was Han
Club
Solo.
Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? On naming it Club Obi-Wan?
I mean, it's George Lucas, right? Because doesn't he? I mean, he put C-3PO and R2-D2 on the Raiders hieroglyphs.
Yes, exactly.
I like it. I mean, it's cheesy. It's really cheesy. I think this is a little on the nose, right? It's a little obvious and loud. I would have appreciated it more if it was a little bit more subtle. But I love having the Star Wars reference. I just think, I don't know. It's like that little like nerd in me as a kid was like, when I picked up on it and realized it was so much fun, right? And I really love that sort of fun element for those. It's less of a thing now, right? When you have, I watch all these YouTube channels, but like they break down every second of a video. And so everybody kind of knows about it. But as a kid, when you're watching, you're like, wait, you have to pause the VHS and point it out to your friends. And there's something really fun about it that I appreciate.
Yeah.
Can I give you my hot take?
Yeah.
Do it.
I hate Easter eggs.
I know he does. I can tell.
And Obi-Wan Kenobi is my favorite Star Wars character. I hate Easter eggs. I feel like they pulled me right out of the film. Like I don't want to think about it. I don't want to be thinking about other movies while I'm in the movie, right? And I don't like cameos either. So when Dan Aykroyd shows up as they're getting on the plane,
what is that? Where'd that even come from? Like, why was he there? Was he just like around? Yeah, I was going to say, was he around the set one day?
There was probably some cocaine on set, and Dan Aykroyd came up like a Hoover vacuum. It's like, oh, since I'm here, I don't know. It was the 80s.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah. It was such a strange cameo because I wrote down in my notes, does it count as a cameo? Because he's barely shown. His back is to the camera for 95.
That's what a cameo is, Julia.
I mean, I know, but I mean, like, it's a cameo, except that you won't even notice it's a cameo because, like, he's barely on screen enough to even tell, like, to even get that little hint and wink that, like, oh, wait, I know that guy. If it wasn't for his voice, I wouldn't know that it was him. Right. Because you can't actually see his face. He's in shadow. His back is to the camera. It's so random.
All right. I want to get us to India.
Yeah.
Like, thoughts. Okay. We get on the plane. We're working way there. I actually always enjoyed the no parachute scene. I always thought that was fun. Growing up, I was like, oh, you can do that? I was hoping that they would dump Willie out of the plane.
For the record,
every time I watch this movie.
Okay, stop. Before we get to India, we have to talk about this Willie hatred because we all know that it's not her fault, right? Spielberg or Lucas or both of them were going through some sort of weird breakup, so they decided to make the woman just this horrible, shrill person. And reality,
Spielberg married her.
They're still married.
Yes.
She does a lot of like his camera work too, when it's just like she'll like push the camera or pull the camera. So, but let me just say, I was thinking about this the other day, and as someone who does not like nature or a whole lot of adventure or bugs, I think she's actually pretty brave because she does complain, okay, about riding on an elephant and the elephant stinks and she falls into the water and the bats and she's running around screaming. But Indy would have been running around screaming if he had shaken out his clothes and it turned out to be a bat, right? I mean, rabies. And then with the bugs, she has to put her hand in the bugs.
That scene is gross.
Indiana Jones and Short Round would have died if that would have been me. I would have been like, absolutely not. I'm not sticking my hand in there. This is your guys' fault. Figure it out, right? The fact that all those bugs are crawling on her, she did so much more past her breaking point. And I think she should be given credit for that.
I agree.
Silence.
No, I mean, I agree. I mean, she does. And I wrote something down later. Like, later she gives the guy a good punch to the face.
Yes.
Right? And so, like, she's capable. But then part of me is also like, well, then why can't you be more capable earlier? And why do we have to go through this nonsense of like, oh my God, I broke my nail. I'm so upset.
Mm-hmm. It's called the character development.
Yeah, it's character development. It's also
breaking your nail hurts.
Okay. It does. And it's also... It's trying to be an arc, Julia. I think it's trying to be a character arc, but I think what you might be picking up on, sorry, I interrupted you. But I think what you're picking up on is an attempt at a character arc that perhaps falls short.
Mm-hmm. It's a bit weak of a character arc. If she just goes from, oh my God, I broke a nail to now I can deal with bugs. It still feels very like, I don't know, underwhelming in terms of character depth. It feels very superficial, especially when we have someone like Marion, who's such a badass in the other movie, right? Which is interesting because I think, wasn't she up for being Marion in the first movie but didn't get it or something like that? But in any case, like it is a poor portrayal of a sort of heroine in distress in some ways, but at least she has a little bit of growth throughout the end of it, but she is so shrill. I mean, she is like, I agree she should get credit, but I think as an actress, she's doing her best with what's given to her.
Oh yeah.
But the script is just, she is the worst.
She's supposed to be.
Well, can I also interject? Because I think Julia brings up a good point about Marion, which is the fact that if you try to, like, you actually have to go like 180 degrees the opposite direction of Marion in this film. If you're going to offer someone else, right, you're going to have like someone, like, you'd never see Marion in that red dress, right? That's certainly not the beginning, right? Not with painted nails or anything like, I just had to do it.
Yeah.
I just waiting
painted
to see your
nails are
faces
so
on
gross.
that.
Jason doesn't like painted nails.
I do not like painted nails. I don't like painted nails. I don't like fake nails, and I don't like lipstick. Come at me, bros. Everybody's listening. There goes my. What?
Okay.
Leah's making faces.
But I do just want to say I'm a Willie stan, okay? Because she never asked to be involved in the situation. She grabbed the antidote. I almost said anecdote. She grabbed it, saved Indiana Jones's life, and then she was brought on this adventure. She never asked for it. I identify with her, and Marion is if I had her singing voice and I were half as pretty as she was, I would come on. And then Marion, on the other hand, her father was Abner Ravenwood. She had no choice but to be full of adventure. You know what I mean? So these are two very different women. I don't think we can compare them. Thank you very much.
I need sidebar right now.
Okay.
Yes.
Can we cast Abner Ravenwood in our own minds? This bothers me. Who does Abner Ravenwood look like? Right? Because we have to assume he's 15, 20 years older than Indy? Something like that? Because Marion is 10 years younger. So let's say Abner Ravenwood in 1932. Because he dies fairly early, I think.
I say
he's dead in 35.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say a 60-year-old Abner Ravenwood. Who you got?
What about Richard Harris?
He's too old.
Too old.
But not when this movie was made.
No,
are we doing it now? Are we doing it
now?
When
If you're what is in your mind's eye? What does Abner Ravenwood look like?
Jude Law,
Anthony Stewart Head.
Oh, I like that.
Oh, from Buffy.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Giles from Buffy. That's very good.
But he was I can't stop thinking about Giles, but he was also the villain in Ted Lasso, so it's
yeah, I know, but you can't go Jude Law. He's too handsome.
Yeah, that's true.
You need somebody somebody in their 60s, right? Mm-hmm. I think is who you need. Oh, you ready? I got one for you. Okay. Liam Neeson.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Could do that.
Right. He's manly enough for Harrison, for Indy to faller around like a puppy dog.
Yes.
Right. But also has the book
he has
smart thing about him.
Set of skills.
Right.
He does have a particular set of skills.
Congratulations. The three of you just got volunteered for Taken. So,
yeah. Oh, God. I love that movie.
Yes.
Can we? But I only do it if we don't have to also watch Taken 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7.
We're only doing Taken.
No, I think there was 4 or 3.
Listen, if 17-year-olds are still listening to U2 in 2005, all right, but whatever. Okay. All right, back to Indy. Let's go. Oh, can we take Indy to India now?
Yes.
And go there. Who wants to jump in on our thoughts on the ways in which we come to this village, the representations of indigenous Indians there? What's going on? Leah, who did her work on South Asia.
Yeah, say this is Leah all over it.
This is Leah's show. Go on.
She's like, I checked out the script and
we're waiting.
Tell us all the things. Go.
Leah, you go. We're drinking.
Devanagari, and there are notably two really wonderful, I say as I throw it around, two really wonderful Sanskrit scholars at UC Berkeley. And the script Devanagari is used for a number of different languages. So there's a language and then there's a script. They're not the same thing. A language is what you speak. A script is what you write in. And so I looked it up and I got a still of the piece of, I'm going to say it's a part of a tapestry.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it's a tapestry fragment. That's going to be my interpretation of the Sanskrit cloth that Indy receives. And in my research, there is a man named John Smith who was contacted by the production team to provide a Sanskrit version of follow the path of Shiva and do not betray his truth. He did so, sent off his manuscript, his Sanskrit composition, and it appeared in the film, although some of the forms are slightly altered. And so the first word, Shambhoho, which is Shiva's, can still be read quite easily. And as I paused this, I was able to make it out. So it is supposed to be, as Indiana says, remain in the way of Shiva and do not betray his truth. Now, one more thing about this tapestry before I let this go. Notably, there is a scene as they go back behind, what is it? Is it a pillar in his bedroom? Yes.
Yeah, it's in her bedroom.
Mhm.
Oh, it's in her bedroom. Excuse me. There we go. There's a pillar that opens up, and Indiana takes out his lighter and is looking at this wall fresco, and compares it to this tapestry, and compares the Devanagari script on the wall with the tapestry fragment. Now, this really, really resonated with me because I actually just taught my students in Egyptian history about a phenomenon in ancient Egypt in which we can hypothesize about portable copies of texts and images circulating around in Egypt, even if they don't survive. An example of this, if I may, is in the story of the Battle of Kadesh. Ramses the Great is betrayed by two spies who defect and betray him. There are reliefs in the temple of the Ramesseum and at Abu Simbel that depict two Hittite spies begging for their life as they're being beaten. Now, these are miles away from one another. And so what we have to do is hypothesize that there are portable manuscripts. And my research focus for my dissertation is a portable manuscript. So portable manuscripts might not survive in the archaeological record, but we can see them on temple walls and in frescoes, and we can sort of put together the missing pieces. So when I saw this in the Temple of Doom, it really resonated with me. And this is my codfish moment, is comparing the portable object with the actual sort of larger than life fresco on the wall.
That's awesome.
Do we know, Leah, like the inspiration behind these stones, these runes, right? Is this real? Is this just an idea of some spiritually imbued stone? Like, do we have a sense of that? Do you guys have any idea as far as like where these stones come from, or this idea?
Yeah, so they are based on a real set of stones, but they're not called Sankara stones though. So that part is made up. But there are some like threads here that are based in at least old history, so that's something that like my deep dive was sort of looking into how sort of modern scholars might interpret some of this. But there were these groups of men that they're identified as Thugi in the movie, and they worship the goddess Kali, and they're so that part is somewhat accurate, although there's debates now about whether or not that actually is accurate, but I'll get to that. But the stones are stones that are sacred to Shiva, that have sort of power, and so I think these are supposed to be roughly based on those, but not connected though to Kali as far as I understand. And I don't believe the term Sankara is a term that actually it relates to anything.
Do you guys want to talk about the palace itself, about getting into the dynamics of what's going on there? We've got this ancient, it feels like this resurrected like Indian regime there with the kid, and then also we've got the British Empire there. This was 1934, I think it is. So of course British was there. What are we thoughts on the representation?
I
of
think
the
it's 1935, but yeah. But
35,
Kate, tell
right.
us about the British.
Oh, the British in India.
Go on.
So I'm going to start this like I do with my son. I'll be like, back in 1600 something. So the East India Company had been basically operating as its own sovereign system within
Wait,
India.
Is this like the East India Trading Company?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not still
arm?
they're not still operating in 1935, but they were up until for like 250 years. They gained a ton of political and military power up until like 1858, 1860, when the mutiny, the Indian Rebellion, took place. And they mentioned that at dinner, which I was really struck by because I haven't seen this movie in a really long time. And, some of my original work in history of archaeology was done on Margaret Murray, who was born in Calcutta in 1863. And so she was like, everybody I knew talked about the mutiny. She goes, if you said the words, the mutiny, everyone knew what you were talking about. Everyone had a memory. Everyone had a trauma. She wouldn't call it trauma, but everyone had a memory about it. And so when they bring it up again at dinner, it's for the Indians at dinner, it is as though it had just happened, because it was this extremely traumatic event where Indian soldiers who had been hired by the East India Company said, this is enough. We're done being treated as second-class citizens in our own country. And it was an extremely brutal and just really violent sort of put down, right, by the British. There were a lot of women and children who died, a lot of people burned alive, a lot of people, that sort of thing. So it really was up in the northern parts and northeastern parts, but it impacted everybody in India. But then the British remained in control, but that's when you get Queen Victoria as the Empress of India, and they're still in some control in 1935. So the British are there. They have to entertain them. But as you notice, right, the guy who greets everybody who comes to Pancop House, he has a British accent. He's like, I was in Oxford, because he was part of the ruling class and they sent their kids to England to be educated and then come back and rule in India. So there's this whole colonial dynamic where he's still going to be a second-class citizen, even though he did everything right? The British said, you need to jump through these hoops. And he said, okay, I will. But still, because the color of your skin, you're never going to be as good as us. And so when you have that captain or whoever it is, major, I don't know who it is, sort of lecturing him on his own land, you're just like, stop it, just come on. But yeah, I mean, so that whole scene I was really into because I wanted to know what they were going to say about what was going on in India at the time. And of course, in India, they were like, the thing that we can do right now. And again, I am not an Indian historian. This was just part of some of my work, but they were being civilly disobedient. Now, I'm not going to say that Pancop Palace and all of the stuff they were doing trying to find the stones was civil disobedience, but reviving the palace, right? And reviving the Rajasthan and saying this person is the ruler of this area, that was being generally disobedient to the British. So I was like, yeah, go you. The way that, the reasons that you did it, not so great. But yeah, I mean, and then, 20, 30 years later, they start to move more toward independence after they lose millions of people in the Second World War, of course. So I didn't like that scene for all of the colonial stuff in it. But also I really loved that scene for the conversations that they were having.
Yeah, because it feels like it's very much of the period, right? Where you've got the imperial occupying, empire lecture. And I kept thinking, actually, Kate, about Vietnam and France.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very similar dynamic with that, right? So, I mean, it's like you can climb as high as you want within the Indian hierarchy, but you're never going to be English.
Never. No matter how many generations of white folks you have in your bloodline, if there's one Indian descendant, you're never going to be good enough according to that system.
This is why I'm dying for Dev Patel to be the next James Bond. I want so much to have an Indian James Bond.
Yes.
Leah's face.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wouldn't he be perfect? He's the perfect age. You're British, aren't you? Right? I mean,
let's do it.
Can I add, so this scene, before we get to the dining part, which is a whole other conversation of this scene, I love, one of my favorite lines is happening, or back and forths. He's trying to I forget exactly who was part of this conversation, but they're talking to Indy, and they're talking about, like, you know, how he sort of pissed a bunch of people off, and he's like, didn't you,
yes.
Aren't you the one who did X, Y, and Z? And he's like, yeah, well, that was a misunderstanding. And he's like, didn't the Sultan threaten to cut off your head? And he was like, no, it wasn't my head. He was like, your hands. He was like, no, it wasn't my hands. It was a misunderstanding. He kind of just like looks down, and I'm just like, I just like love that whole back and forth was delightful. And that felt very classic Indy Jones to me.
Yes, it did.
How famous is Indiana Jones? Because they roll up into India and they're like,
he is the eminent archaeologist.
Yep.
My dream is to walk into a room and be introduced as, oh, this is Julia Troche, the eminent archaeologist.
You know her.
But can I ask you? And Kate, you know, you wrote about these women Egyptologists. Was there not a time in which academics were treated as if not celebrities, but certainly, like, you know, we're a long time away from, like, we've come a long different way from this, because it feels like now being an academic may cast you into a bad light in certain circles. But it feels like at one time, like having a PhD or being the learned professor of whatever, it's like a big deal to be in their company. Am I wrong?
Yep. No, you are absolutely correct. So I read through, part of my job is just like reading through a bunch of diaries and letters and things, and people be like, oh, I met with so-and-so. And it's like, everybody knows who this person is, and I'm having to go look them up in my who was who in Egyptology, but everybody knows, right? There are people in a lot of these areas where you say, I am going to go meet with Dr. Grant. Everyone knows who that is. But then nobody wrote it down in their letters to say who it was. So now we don't know who it was, and we don't know what they were doing.
I know Dr. Grant. He's a paleontologist.
Well, yes.
Joke. You stole a joke. Oh.
No.
So bad.
Different Dr. Grant.
This brings up the topic of the decline of public intellectuals in the 21st century. Of which, I mean, if you try to think of, in your mind, dear listener, try to think of a public intellectual that we have today in the 21st century. It's Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Oh my God, that's the first person I thought of when you said that.
I was thinking of too.
And
Orange kangaroos in Denmark. Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe Zahi Hawass, maybe, if you know.
Bill Nye.
Bill Nye.
I mean, that's realistic. I mean, that's what you think of, right? Remember Mr. Wizard? This was the 80s.
Yes.
Mr. Wizard.
I watch Mr. Wizard all the time.
Don Herbert was his name.
He was so great.
Mr. Wizard. He was Bill Nye before Nye happened.
Yeah, because Mr. Wizard would at least be like, you're wrong. I asked you to guess, and you are incorrect.
We watch Blue's Clues instead of Mr. Wizard.
Okay, Steve's fantastic.
Okay, well, that I'm telling you.
I didn't watch Blue's Clues.
I love Steve.
But it's true. To your point, there's like 4 people you can think of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, there are a couple of historians
Jason
out there,
Herbert,
maybe.
Right? Is on
Jason
the rise.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. You can go.
This is why we need more public-facing outreach, such as podcasts.
Well, there's
public-facing books like "Women in the Valley of the Kings." You know, we are failing at our job of in many ways of communicating with the public, and it's something that, you know, I think the rise of social media, and I could attribute it to any number of causes, but also academics do play a part in this too.
Okay, can we talk for a second about this? Because, you know, I've gone on the job market, you know, to present myself. I went to one university, and they said the response was that I was too conversational, and I was like, right? And I would try to talk. right? And I would try to talk about like the power of social media and the people look at me like I've got two heads. And I'm like, I mean, and academics want to push back. They're like, we're not in an ivory tower. I'm like, bullshit,
Yeah.
you're not. You're hiding here. Congratulations on publishing your book, but whatever, man.
I'll tell a very quick aside that this quick aside can be deleted as needed.
Fletcher.
I know, Fletcher, note, I'm so
Mark.
sorry. I'm so sorry, sir.
Right.
But I was told once a friend was practicing a job talk for an Ivy League institution, and our other friend who also was in our graduate program said that our professors advised her when giving a job talk to at least make sure at some point during the job talk, it's so esoteric, so sort of so specific and nuanced and kind of like down a rabbit hole that people in the room don't follow you. The whole point of a job talk is to talk over the people in the room. So at some point they're confused. So they're like, oh, wow, this person must know so much more than me. Because if you don't talk over their head, then they're going to think, well, I can understand this and follow it. It must not be that amazing. And I laughed out loud and said that was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard. But I'm also not at that R1 institution that she did get the job at. And, but I would say that and I enjoy being at Missouri State, I think a bit more for many reasons. But I feel like, our jobs as academics, I mean, Eric Klein had a great AIA lecture keynote years back about this very point about how academics need to show up and step up. I think Kara Cooney is doing a lot of this work in terms of trying to be a public Egyptologist, like Salima Ikram as well. So there are folks who are doing that work, but more of us need to sort of get on the bandwagon, and we need to like get the ivory tower to chill a little bit and understand that, there's no point in being in the ivory tower if we're the last ones on earth and no one cares about what we do.
Right. Yeah. I think that I couldn't have said it better myself, Julia. And I think that that doesn't require us to dumb down our research or stop using jargon or dumb down our published papers. It just requires that we be accessible and engage, like on this podcast.
Yeah. I had a couple things. One of the biggest comments I used to get from my advisor when I was writing my dissertation was, "You write too pretty." Right? He's like, "You're too pretty of a writer. Ugly it up." I mean, that was a common thing. He was like, "Ugly up your writing." Right? And then secondly,
I don't even know what that means.
I don't even know. It was pretty much like, "I hate you," is what it was. Like, my advisor and I famously did not get along. I think he's a phenomenal scholar.
My advisor just screamed and said, "Don't use the word liminal ever again."
I love the word liminal.
Well, I used it way too much. I used it like 100 times, and he was like, "You're not allowed to use this word anymore."
I wasn't allowed to use the word cracker in my dissertation, which refers to like cracker settlers that have cattle and stuff like that in Florida. Mm-hmm. So instead, I just loaded up my dissertation with Star Wars references. I called Gainesville, what was it? A wretched hive of scum and villainy is what I called it.
I have a Macklemore quote that made it to my first book. Macklemore made it in. I'm very proud of that.
Okay, but can anyone else say that they titled their thesis a quote from Indiana Jones?
No. And I'm so jealous.
What was that? What was your thesis title?
My master's thesis at Oklahoma in history of archaeology was "You Call This Archaeology" was the title, and then colon Flinders Petrie and eugenics.
Okay, I like it. All right.
Also, you know what this movie's missing? More archaeology.
Yeah.
There's not as much. There's some digging with picks.
There's like child labor, enslaved child labor.
Okay, but that makes sense.
Okay, so let's go on the record and say Julia does not support the products of children, is what we're saying here. She doesn't. Their intellectual and physical labor she doesn't support. So there's that. Before we get to that part, can we talk about the dinner scene? Mm-hmm. Because this is the scene I think as a kid that scarred me for life.
Yeah.
And maybe in a lot of ways might get into this idea that you hear a lot of people talk about the Orientalism of this film. Mm-hmm. I had bugs for lunch. So who wants to take this thing? You
had bugs for lunch?
That's what Willie says.
Oh, sorry. Dinner. That's right. No, I was like, what? Yeah. So this one time I was in Mexico City and we went to a Oaxacan restaurant, and I speak Spanish pretty well. I hear it much better than I speak it. And so he was trying to explain to us what we were going to get, and we were ordering guacamole, and he said con chapulines, and I said, I don't know what those are. And so he pulled out his phone and he showed me, and it was bugs. It was grasshoppers. And I said no, but my friend said yes, and so she ate them. She liked them. But it was honestly, I flashed back to Temple of Doom, like for a second in my head. Now I know that sounds very colonial. I loved Mexico City. It was the coolest city I've probably ever been to. But yeah, I mean, it's meant to be gross. It's meant to gross you out and kind of go, oh, this is what brown people eat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it goes to me right along with what was going on in the village, the food they were feeding Indiana Jones and Short Round and Willie in the village. And one it had a fly on it when she picked it up. And so there's this whole, it's dirty, it's not civilized, quote unquote. But you still sort of have to eat it. And then, but I will say again, I'm going to excuse Willie throughout this entire podcast, because again, she's coming from Shanghai in her cute little house. And then she's, approached with animal-based food that she was not ready for, right? Except until he ate the apple. And then she was very grateful.
And I don't blame Willie for this. I blame the producers, script writers, whatever, for this, right? Like, I mean, so I think her character is the character that is worldly in some ways, but not in others. And she, as you said, is confronted with food she's not ready for. While bugs are an incredibly, cheap and high protein food source and could actually sort of revolutionize our food scarcity issues in the world. Yep. They are, they seem gross. And for whatever reason, we're okay eating a lobster now, which was disgusting at one point in time for folks, right, for a society at large, and was the sort of poor food because it looks like a giant creepy spider. And now it's a delicacy, right? And so I do think there is something to be said for, this being a very sort of quote unquote Western worldview of what the East is, or as you said, sort of quote, what brown people are supposed to eat vis-a-vis, her salad or soup that she wanted, or the crisp apple, the fresh fruit. And it was supposed to be shock value, not just in cutting open the large snake with like the smaller snakes coming out. And then of
course,
what's the surprise? What's the surprise?
Snake surprise. What's the surprise?
It's very like, what's in the box? It's very like, what's in the surprise?
I was like, what's the surprise? What's in the box?
But but the visual though of the dessert is supposed to be shocking, appalling, and othering, right? As a viewer, we're supposed to be sort of having that's an othered, exotic, quote unquote, experience. And that's part of the problem, right? And I'll get off my high horse here, or my soapbox, whatever it is, in a second. Part of this, or going back a little bit to the whole premise of this movie, the sort of thuggy group of bandits that are trying to get these stones in order to gain power. This idea of the thuggy group is something that probably is derived from British imperial fears of living in India, in essence, right? Sort of the British are coming from their version of civilized world, and they're coming to this world that doesn't look like theirs. The food is different. The people are different, and they're scared and uncomfortable in this other environment.
It's humid. Yeah.
Hot and humid, very different weather from what they're used to. So there's the physicality of being in the space is very different and uncomfortable for them. And so they create this sort of boogeyman, in this case, boogeymen, that are the thuggies. Now, there are obviously indigenous contributions to this as well, and it's not as though this is something that's entirely made up by the British. But there is a book I'll shout out if anybody's interested in this. I reached out to my friend Chelsea Davis, who's a historian of the British Empire, but was her advisor, I guess, wrote a lot on this. But the book that I was looking at is called Thuggy: Banditry and the British in Early 19th Century India by Kim Wagner. So for those who are interested, add it to your reading list. But it's actually really interesting in thinking about how the British in this instance are sort of perceiving this other, and then how that narrative has lasted and persisted and endured to Temple of Doom, right? To the idea that this same narrative has persisted for a couple hundred years now, in more or less whole form. without much interrogation and criticism until, what we're doing right now. And, a bunch of the scholars have published on this.
Do you guys want to, like, I felt like the scene did two different things. I think the biggest thing was to other the people. And then it was also set up for Willie to be the somewhat comic relief of the film, or constantly being freaked out. And then also to show like how smooth of an operator Indy actually is. He can speak like 75 different languages. He understands the customs. He's so he's so ready for any situation. He understands, like, going into this cultural context, this is how I operate, right? It's just to really kind of make him in so many ways a superhero. And like, look, that stuff, like, to this day, like where they're eating the beetles and the stuff, it's still in my head. And I think that's the thing, is like this film could just continually, like, there's a weird thing going on here between the bad guys here and the Nazis that make up most of the other Indiana Jones films. The Nazis are just like us. They just turned bad, right? They chose the wrong path, right? They're white, but they went wrong, right? These folks are incredibly different. And I understand they're trying to do something that's different than Raiders here, but it's like they go too far in saying, and trying to paint these as like, whereas where you can really go, look, these are just folks who are suffering because of this other thing. And there's a bunch of stuff going on here. Namely, the big problem here is colonialism. It's the empire that's hurting these people, not the Thuggies. I mean, the Thuggies are bad. I mean, ripping hearts out is probably bad, but it's really, I think they could have gone a different way. Like, what if the British Empire was actually the bad guy here? It really leaned into that with this film.
Right. Let's think about the fact that this small village needs a magical stone in order for their, crops to grow and for them to be self-sustaining under British, influence. Like, let's think about the fact that this village, like, needs a magical stone to survive in the first place, right? Like, I mean, yeah, so there could be some, like, real easy sort of critiques, low-hanging critiques here of British imperialism and British colonial history here, but instead it honestly, it's just that it relies on very lazy tropes. It relies on very, not to be, and I don't intend this to be a pun, but sort of very black and white framing of us and other, and it's kind of lazy storytelling. And I think that's what upsets me the most. I mean, maybe that's not the most. I guess the colonialism, the racism upsets me the most. But just from a film critic lover standpoint, it's just kind of lazy storytelling. There's not a lot of complexity in these characters, and it's very exoticizing and orientalizing, a la Said, and yeah.
And let's do away too with the with this idea that they've got this quote unquote savage religion or religious practice that needs to tear out, hearts. Maybe we can talk about that in a minute. But like, the whole point was this group had been forced into secrecy because of the British Empire. And so now they have to do all of this under the cover of darkness, under the cover of secrecy. And they're looking for these magical stones because the British Empire came in and did all of these things, all of these terrible things. So I think, like, there is this sort of umbrella of the British are the bad guys, but they, of course, right, paint it as, but they're ripping out people's hearts, and so we need to stop that. And on the one hand, yes, I get that. But on the other hand, this again is this paternalistic, we know what's best for you and what's best for your belief system. So we're going to tell you what that is. And that is to stop your practice of however you think that you need to get rain or get, crops to grow and things like that. So yeah, Leah, I'm sorry. I started talking right when you were about to.
No, I was actually about to bring us to the topic of religion. At one point, Indiana says, "Oh, don't worry, Short Round. It's just a ghost story." Mm-hmm. That's actually, I think, I might be misremembering this, but I think they're just talking about Shiva there. And that was actually really surprising for me, even for 1984. That was pretty surprising to me that got through the script. And the fact that Indiana would actually describe a religion in this way, a living religion in this way.
But doesn't that really kind of get down to the central crux of like who Indiana Jones is, at least over the first three films, which is very much fact versus faith? And I mean, we see that really in the first. And I think you can get away with him saying that in this film because it's a prequel that takes place before he's confronted with the power of the Ark, right?
Yeah.
You know, so he can say, you know, it's a ghost story, but he hasn't been through what we know he's about to go through at this point in time. Because the central aspect of Indy, especially by the time you get to Last Crusade, is him coming to terms with the fact that there are forms of power and things of knowledge beyond his understanding, and that he simply has to believe in them. So, I mean, I feel like that's really, I think it's one of the weaknesses of frankly Crystal Skulls, that it kind of shoots that back down. But it's like, isn't that the big crux here? Is that Indy's own learning experience is to accept that faith is real and has power over people?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for saying that, because also in, again, my treadmill saga of the winter of 2025, the winter of my discontent, is that like, I've been watching these movies, right? And thinking about the things, the sort of threads that go through. And yes, he is very resistant, right? To anything having to do with faith, which as a scientist, absolutely, right? Everyone experiences faith differently. But if I find this object, I can tell you how big it is. I can tell you how much it weighs. We know these things about it, right? So he's got this like faith versus science thing going on. And it goes on all, like you said, all throughout the films. And this is the prequel, right? So we have to sort of excuse a little bit of it. But then at the end, when they bring the stone back and the leader of the village says, you know, do you get it now? And he's like, yes, I understand its power. Because he was taken over by the thing that he was made to drink. Yeah, Kali Ma. And then he was brought out of it. So he saw and experienced all of this stuff. And I don't mean to like spoil anything else, but I will just say that like in the final film, somebody says to him, or he says to someone like, why are you going around chasing this thing that that your father was obsessed with? And that person says, can't you, like, this was important to him, can't you relate? And it's just like, oh yeah, he really can. And I think he sort of pauses there too. And it's just like, yeah, I get it. Okay, let's move on.
Are we actually starting to pull out some of the better parts that this film does? Is that
so let me bring us back to Julia, the terrible things.
Yeah.
Don't go there too quick.
Everyone, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Julia Troche and our chat group text messages on the daily. Go on.
Yes. I'm the heartless one. I do love. Okay, so I'll start with the positive because complimenting is kind of sandwiching. I do love the shadow. Yeah, the shadow work in the fight scenes I thought was fantastic. Right. So after the meal, you know, there's this back and forth between Willie and Indy about, you know, you're going to come back into my room in 5 minutes. And, you know, I do love kind of that banter back and forth. And then there's this great fight scene, and there's so much incredible shadow work that I really, really enjoy. And it made me just feel like I was on Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland, though, because of all the shadow work that I love so much. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I do love Short Round when he's like, oh, I should give this to Willie and check on her before bed. And Short Round goes, tell me later what happens.
I love that line. Short Round is 47 years old.
Yeah, it was fantastic. But then I go immediately to ew, because then at the end of that scene, before the fight scene begins, she goes, I could have been your greatest adventure. And it just, I don't know, that
I was wondering how many sort of final zingers did they practice? Yeah. You know what I mean? Because it's like, stop like there. No, stop there.
It's a list of alts, and they're just going through the alts, you know, the candy bag, as I don't know if that's a term that shows up everywhere in media, but I know in The Office, from listening to The Office ladies, they talked about the candy bag, which was just the whole list of alts that they pull out and have you try. And I feel like they just kept them all.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? This is very historically relevant. What's Indiana Jones's body count by 1935?
By 1935?
We haven't seen any more prequels. So in this film,
I'm asking you to surmise as experts in history, based upon what you know of Indiana Jones, of all the films we've watched, the Indy lore. What's the body count? If she was going to be his greatest adventure.
I mean, at least 30.
I was
Okay.
27. Yeah, okay.
40.
So because we know from the Indiana Jones Chronicles, right?
Yep.
He was doing stuff during the First World War, so he was off having adventures. Of course, he was in the field, and
He looked just like Sean Patrick Flannery, right?
Right, and we know from archaeologists being in the field, especially around this point in time, that these things happened, and even
what happens in the dirt stays in the dirt.
Stays in the dirt, and there were actually, especially in Egypt, there were a number of sex workers, right? That men could go and visit. And very often there were still markets where they would sell enslaved people to white men, right? Basically for this purpose. And they would get married or whatever. So there's a bunch of British Egyptologists who, quote unquote, married their enslaved Egyptian. And it's like, that's not marriage. But I could imagine that he did some of that.
Can we also just remember that as a teenager, he looks like River Phoenix? And so this boy started young.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah, this guy continually morphs from River Phoenix to Sean Patrick Flannery to the king of them all, to Harrison Ford. I mean, it's a rough go. Leah, you were making faces and actively covering up your mouth when we were starting this dialogue. You have thoughts. You gave us the alt fiction of Indy and Belloc last time we talked. So
Yes.
Yeah, remember?
I do.
They
were just roommates.
Right.
Oh my God, Leah, they were roommates, and they were roommates.
They were friends. They were friends.
Besties.
Right. Leah, what are you thinking?
I have no idea. I was actually going to go way on the lower end. Actually, way
really
on the low.
How low?
2 or 3.
What?
Whoa. No way. He's James Bond. He's a lover.
He certainly looks like it. He certainly presents himself that way. But what's underneath?
Right, and push comes to shove. Oh, that's a terrible choice of words. When it comes down to it in this movie, he doesn't ever hook up with Willie, does he?
No,
they're gonna. Okay.
They're gonna.
They gotta go to Delhi
after the credits. Yeah, it's gonna happen.
They're on their way to
at
Delhi.
This point, by the end of the film, it's assumed like there's gonna be some celebration time, and Short Round's gonna get a story. I mean, that's.
I don't know. I think they could have just like had a lovely kiss and parted. Parted ways because she's like, I'm done with this adventure.
I don't know.
No, she's gonna have her greatest adventure.
Agree.
All right, can we talk? All right, I was sending out gifts and pictures on Valentine's Day because I was alone of people ripping their hearts out. Like, what do we think about this? About this? Scared the shit out of me as a kid.
In my notes, I wrote "heart being ripped out equals awesome" with all caps.
This is why you're the dark one of the.
This is Julia, who said that some of the most romantic films are like Romeo and Juliet.
Romeo plus Juliet, specifically.
It's a tragedy. I don't care. Everyone knows it's a tragedy. It's not a romance.
2 teenagers over a weekend. Yeah, that's
killing
not
themselves.
Fair.
No, it is terrifying and funny that they don't do that to Willie, right?
Yeah, I never understood why they didn't.
Yeah.
What?
Take Willie's heart out.
Yeah, why didn't they rip her heart out before she got burned?
Rip my heart out before you burn me. Really?
You know what? I don't think the audience could do it. Yeah. I don't think the audience could.
Well, right,
and like at that point in time, she does die. Right? There's no going back once you rip the heart out.
Yeah.
Right. So I think they just chain her up, and you get caught up in the idea of it's Indy versus her and so forth, and then Short Round's got to come to the end. Right. Come safe.
And what happens there on the ladder or the bridge when the head guy, whose name I don't remember, tries to go for Indy's heart and it doesn't really work. And then he goes for the stones. So I think that he sort of realized my power is in these stones, not in myself.
Well, I think it would have worked, but Indy just kind of grabs his hand and pushes back, because he's clearly because when he does the thing, and I have a brother. I've tried to rip his heart out with this movie so many times when I was in the 80s. It's like, right? He clearly does, and then Indy grabs it and pushes it back because he's clearly in pain when he's doing it. It seems like it might work.
But I think
Indy is able to push back.
Leah, go for it.
He's guarding his heart, if you will. Does this have a deeper meaning for Indiana's character? Is he guarding his heart? Because when he and Willie are having their back and forth, I'll see you in 5 minutes. No, I'll see you in 5 minutes. And they're going back and forth, and he resolutely does not enter her bedchamber. Except he does, but not for that purpose. And he is so unwilling. It's all banter. It's all anticipatory, hot and heavy, and I think this might even can be read as Indiana Jones guarding his heart quite literally.
See, you are such a romantic.
That is so beautiful. And I hate to ruin it with my take, but
do it.
You're gonna though.
I'm going to try to stop me. But my take was more. I mean, so yes, I love that. I love that beautiful metaphor. I hope that's the real answer. But I was taking it as the fact that Indy was having sort of a connection to the stones himself. So as Indy was sort of as he because he was underneath the spell at one point. And then he was starting to realize the power of these stones because later he does the incantation and the stones get hot and burn through the bag and everything. Yeah. So I took this as Indy sort of, being attacked, but then realizing, oh, wait, like I can also possess this power, or I can also engage this power that this guy has, and sort of uses that power to push the guy off, and then does the incantations. The stones fall. He's able to grab the stone even though it's like on fire, right?
Yeah,
so
without burning himself.
Yeah. So I feel like there's something there to Indy kind of realizing his own ability to engage with the supernatural or the faith or whatever, the storyline we're talking about before. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, like in my mind, I'm like, where physiologically is your soul located?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's in your heart.
It's in your heart.
Right? It's in your heart. I mean, that's easy. You rip the heart out. So the same idea is ripping the soul, right? I think that there's something. And again, this gets back to, all of this stuff gets back to Indy's own quest to understand like faith and spirituality and other powers, because early on in Raiders, we see, this is not about truth. Truth is down the hall. It's about fact. And Indy is a non-believer who is forced over the course of these films to find faith. And later, when Mutt dies, when we find out that Mutt dies between 4 and 5, it destroys his faith. And he just wants to be let go. There's some power here. It's not well executed in 4 and 5 at times, but the overarching story about a man's quest to find his faith remains resolute, if you will.
In that same scene, but also along kind of different lines, is he is also still trying, not just his faith, but he's trying to figure out who he is. And in each movie, if you notice, someone tells him, "This belongs in a museum, so do you." Or, what happens if these stones fall? And the guy's like, they'll be found. You won't be.
Good line.
Yeah, exactly. And like, you're a relic and all of this stuff. So like, who is he? Should he even still be out in the field? Right? Like every single film, it's like, what are you doing still out here? And he's like, I'm sending it. Right? I'm going to do this thing. And I loved that theme as well, because we see that in every single film. What are you doing out here? And he's just like, I'm looking, this thing belongs in a museum. I'm looking for my father. I'm trying to find these stones for this village. I'm trying to get this other piece back because it belongs in a museum. I'm trying to figure all this stuff out. And so, yeah, I think there's two things, right? He's figuring out what his faith is, and also who is he in the end? And we could talk about the end when we talk about number 5, but like, who is he? And that's like, it's sort of, it's kind of this little quest that he's going on.
Can I ask you where Mola Ram sits on the pantheon of Indiana Jones villains? Where does he sit? Like, if you had to put your top 3 villains in the Indiana Jones films, and they can be henchmen, they can be full-on villain, like, who's number 1? Who's number 2? Belloc has to be one.
Yeah,
He's the opposite.
I like him though because he has a very iconic look, right? So the red mohawk stripe and I don't know. I feel like there's he kind of gives us crazy eyes, which is nice and fun. I feel like he's a very iconic villain, which I appreciate.
I feel like he might be better than the guy we get in 3.
Yeah,
we got. I mean, in a lot of ways, right? He's not as wealthy, but he's more of a physical threat. Because we don't get a physical threat to Indy and the other villains. They're all intellectual. This guy does something different.
Are Nazis not a physical threat to the entire planet?
They are today. I tell you that much.
Yeah.
So
no, it's true, right? So I think like Mola Ram is this localized threat, a very physical threat to Indiana, but he's hyper local.
He's the local.
But then the Nazis and of course the communists
and the aliens
and
are the aliens a threat?
They're more umbrella. And they're a continued threat, right? Especially the Nazis. So Belloc, he's number 1 because Belloc and Donovan, I think, are tied because they are opportunistic Nazis. They're like, I'm not a Nazi, but you are, because if you do anything with the Nazis, you're a Nazi.
Right.
Yeah. Complicit. Whereas Mola Ram's like, I'm just trying to like do this thing for me and my people. In this one area.
Is he though? Because when he's talking about his grand plans, he's like, first thing we're doing is going to knock out the Jews, and then we're going to knock out Islam, and then we're coming after the Christians. He says this very explicitly. He's got world domination on his mind as well.
He's just a global threat who's not yet global, right? So he's
catch him early.
Yeah.
Catch him early.
Catch him before art school.
All right. Can we talk about the bridge scene?
Yeah.
What are our thoughts on this versus the climax of the other 2 films? I'm just referring to Raiders and Lost Ark. Like, how do we feel with the bridge scene? Because I think it's the best part of the film.
It is pretty wonderful, and I had to look it up, and there are indeed crocodiles in India, and they are a species called the marsh crocodile. Julia,
okay, because I thought that there was a mistake with gators and crocs in the film.
Really? Say more.
So I read or I listened to another podcast or something in the brain somewhere in there was that they were called the wrong things.
India has also gharials, which are a fish-eating crocodilian with very long snouts and little bulbous pointy noses. But I don't know. Do we even hear the word crocodile in the film? I can't recall. I think they're just there.
They're just rolling around.
But are the animals depicted crocodiles?
Yes. Believe me, I grew up in Louisiana with alligators.
I believe you.
I'm quite no. We had a.
Maybe did they call them gators and they're actually crocs? Is that I don't know. I'll have to do some research and get back to you.
All alligators are crocodiles. Not
all crocodiles are alligators,
right? Because they're all crocodilians. When I was a kid growing up in Breaux Bridge, Louisiana, did I tell you guys this story about the alligator?
No.
So when I was a kid, growing up in Breaux Bridge, which is like in Cajun country, my parents had these friends who had this pet alligator, right? And they had like this 4-foot tall above ground pool. So we would all go over there and jump in the pool, and then they'd put the alligator, whose name was Puppy, right, in the pool with us. Now, when the kids were in there, they would duct tape Puppy's mouth. And we would just I'd be like 5, and there's pictures of me like swimming around in the pool with the alligator who was like 4 feet long. I could hold him on my own. My brother could not. My brother always had to have help. But like I grew up thinking this was normal, and that explains why I'm so well adjusted to this day. So
Leah is losing her shit.
I'm so concerned for so many reasons.
I will send you guys a picture of the alligator. I have him on my phone.
Do it.
I also like the subtle shade that you just threw to your brother too. You're like, my brother couldn't handle this on his own. I could.
There's a lot of shit my brother can't handle, namely life. So, so there's that.
That's right. No, I knew that. I did know that.
Yeah. Anyway.
So back to the bridge. Okay. So before we got to the bridge, I was like, why is this movie still happening? because
I fell asleep when I watched this movie.
It's a long movie, and the
It's not that long.
but it feels long, which is part of the
feels
problem.
long enough.
It's and the mine cart was such a high.
Too long. We don't need it.
But that was such like a high, like this is so exciting and things are happening and so it's like I feel like we didn't need the bridge and a mine cart sequence.
Right.
Like, I feel like there's too many endings. There's a little Fellowship of the Ring, and it's too many endings. And the mine cart, I liked it just because I really am hoping that the new ride in Super Mario Disney or Orlando World, I'm really hoping that the Donkey Kong ride is going to be a mine cart.
Time out. Wait a second. You would go to Orlando and go to some other place other than Walt Disney World?
Yes, I do regularly because I go to Halloween Horror Nights at Universal almost every year.
So
Halloween Horror Nights is amazing.
But I have something to say about the ride, right? Because that was my thought when it was going on. I love the Indiana Jones Spectacular. Will go to it 10 times a day when I am at Hollywood Studios if it's available. Why don't they have a roller coaster that is the mine cart?
Okay, so they are going to. So they have Indy Jones ride in Disneyland, right? So you're in a Jeep and you're sort of going through and
Yeah, it's the basis of Dinosaur, actually.
Oh, is it really?
And so, yeah, so it's the same track, and so they're actually going to change Dinosaur. The word on the street is they're changing Dinosaur, and they're going to put in Indy Jones there.
That's right. Kingdom. That's exactly.
I'll miss Dinosaur, but I'll be happy about Indy Jones.
It's not, and for those of you who don't know, those who really know, because I was at the park the day it opened, we call it CTX, Countdown to Extinction, which is what it was called back before. Mm-hmm. But you have to be a real Disney honcho who actually worked.
You know.
Listen, though, we won't even talk about how Animal Kingdom is a half-day park. But the second thing...
It is totally a half-day park.
Oh, okay, good.
Absolutely. Okay, you and I are like you keep trying to pick fights that I'm like, but I'm over here on your team. I'm like, who am I swinging at?
We're rope dropping the same places.
When we go, it's gonna poor Julia. No, poor Leah.
I'm like, why poor me?
Like, it's gonna be so good.
I love Disney. I am such an unabashed Disney adult.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be.
So Leah's gonna be trying to keep up with us drinking around Epcot. That's gonna be the problem.
Yeah.
I mean, first Mickey Bar is at 7:32 a.m. Mm-hmm. So, it happens. All right, back to the bridge.
I was going to say so there are good things about the bridge. I think that Willie and Short Round work as a really good team on the bridge.
Yeah.
No one's going to be
happy. Hang on, lady, we going for a ride.
Yeah, she's like, oh no, but. Also, once they get up to the top and the British come on both sides, she's like, finally, or it's about time, or something like that. And it's like, okay, come on, like it's giving in Independence Day when, thank God the Americans finally came up with a solution, and it's like, thank God the British finally showed up and they're going to save us. Yeah,
it's very white savior, British savior, insert savior sort of paradigm here. I mean, the fact that this village was just like so lost until the white man showed up, and thank God it's Indy Jones who can save us. And so Indy goes and saves them, but then it's also the British have to show up to save them from the quote unquote barbarians, right? It's all very coded and not so coded. Sorry, Leah, what'd you say?
Very white saviory, and I have that in my notes. I just have white savior saving the boys from the mines. That was a scene.
Although I feel like Short Round is the real savior in the mines.
You're right.
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to have a Short Round dialogue before we finish this, because when I was watching this, I had to jump into reading what happens to Short Round, because one of the frustrating things is that we never see him again in the films.
Yeah.
Right.
So sad.
Do you know what happens to Short Round?
No, what happens to Short Round, Jason Herbert?
They go back to the United States, and Indy enrolls him in boarding school. Short Round eventually becomes an archaeologist and goes off and finds the diamond that we see at the beginning of the film. He finds the peacock's eye.
Oh my God.
How's that, kids? I mean, why can't we have, now that Ke Huy Quan is like doing well, why can't we have a film about Short Round as an adult. Give me a 4-part series on Netflix
Yeah.
about him
Absolutely.
as Indy, as this is Indy would have passed away now, as Short Round in the 1970s, because
Oh
that's how because
But
why not?
this is not out of character for archaeologists to bring back their Egyptian or whatever, quote unquote local sidekicks to the United States to give them a better life. James Breasted does this with one of his Egyptian servants or whatever, and brings him back and writes letters about how he's not adjusting very well and he kind of wants to go home, but he doesn't really understand why he wants to go home because life in the US is way better than life in Egypt. This happened a lot. Archaeologists would bring their assistants or sidekicks, for lack of a better word, sidekick, which is what Short Round was in the film, and attempt to give them what they thought was a better life. So it's nice to know that at least fictionally, Short Round had seems to be happy in what was going on.
But how did do we know how he hooked up with Indy in the first place?
Yes.
I don't know the lore. I didn't follow the chronicles.
It was in the movie.
I didn't follow.
Yeah, so Short Round's parents died. They died in the bombing of Manchuria, if I recall correctly.
Oh, yeah.
They died, right? So he was on the street at 4 years old, and Indy caught him pickpocketing.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I do remember that.
Essentially, de facto adopted him, and then
and he was like such a good pickpocket that he's like, "Wait, kid."
Yeah. Right, and then of course the great part of all of this is that he and Harrison Ford in real life, drifted apart, and then there's this moment during the Academy Awards a couple of years ago when they're actually come back together, and like Ford is kind of well known for kind of being a bit of a grump, although he's gotten nicer, like apparently as years have gone on, and the images when people caught it on camera of those two reuniting for the first time, it's like. I get a little verklempt watching it. So it's real. Yeah. And I like the idea that you can be separated from someone for decades and still find that, that love between you. I think that's really great.
Yeah.
All right. We're coming up towards the end of this pod. I want to hear your final thoughts as far as like, what do we love about this movie? What do we hate? How do we feel ultimately about Temple of Doom? And when are you watching it again next? Leah goes first.
I hate the racism, colonialism, and Orientalism. My God, it is pervasive and completely saturated in this film. Love the action and love that, despite all of the gross imperialism, Indiana Jones ultimately repatriates kind of the stone. Maybe we could call it a repatriation or a rematriation. And there are some really wonderful moments with Short Round. I'm never rewatching it.
Julia.
Not if you have to.
I love the horror. I love that we also didn't talk about the fact that this was the movie that basically caused PG-13 to be a thing. Because this is a PG movie. And after this and a couple other films around this time, they were like, we need something that's like more than just PG. And so they came up with PG-13 in response in large part to this film and a couple others. But this is the one that's often pointed at as like the film that created PG-13. So, I mean, imagine being like a small kid and, going to see this. It's delightful. There's bug horror, there's body horror, there's hearts being ripped out, monkey brains, there's all the things, right? So there's that part of it that I love. And there's some great indie moments that are, indie-esque, but it's really hard to watch. It's really hard to enjoy with all the stuff that Leah pointed out. It feels icky watching it. And I feel like it's a little long. I feel like there are some storytelling issues. I feel like, there's not the best editing. So as a film, I feel like it could be better, but it's okay. But I'm not rushing to, if I watch Indie, like the series again, I probably would skip this one. I feel like I've seen it enough for a while that I will not need to watch it anytime too soon. which I feel bad about because I love Short Round. I love his character so much. And I wish that there was a way to enjoy that character that wasn't this movie.
Yeah, I typically hate kids in movies, and
Me
I still love
too.
Short Round.
I normally just
right?
hate kids, but yeah, in
Yeah,
movies
me
also.
too. But I have two of them, so I have to be like, yeah, you're all right. Kate, if they're not listening, they're in school. Jack.
I agree with hating the racism and the Orientalism. It's really gross, but I love Short Round, and I'm a Willie stan. I think that she gets a bad rap because, she
nail polish. I get it.
well, you don't like the nail polish, and I could lose my voice, but like. She didn't ask for this, but she joined in and she did what she was supposed to do. And she, I think, is a heroine in some, areas. I love when she's like rooting Indy on when he's fighting, the guy in the mines. And she's like, yeah, get him. Love Short Round, of course. I fell in love with Ki Hai Kwan during Goonies, obviously, is the big one. Probably not watching it again for a while. So Miles wants to watch it. My son wants to watch it, but he's 10. And I'm like, I don't think you're ready for this. Like, it's not a film I'm going to let my 10-year-old watch, even though I was probably, it came out, in 85? So I probably watched
84.
it, 84. So I was 5. So I probably watched it when I was 7
We're
or
Gen
8.
X. Listen, we are the garden hose generation. We can do what we want. We can handle it.
Oh my gosh. No, we were watching Major League, right when it came out on HBO. It's like, oh, Major League, it's rated R. What's the problem? Oh, yeah.
Are you kidding me? I was watching like Revenge of the Nerds and talk about a film that was like, we can't do on the watch party.
No.
Oh my God.
No.
Like, that is a cultural moment. It's like, whoa.
That was
I grew up watching that thinking, it's not okay. The good guys are actually the bad guys in that movie.
They're all the bad guys in that movie.
Everyone is bad and no one is good.
No one's good.
At all.
Are you talking about just The World Today or Revenge of the Nerds?
Revenge of the Nerds, really.
Nothing matters.
Yeah.
So, all right, I want to ask you this. Final question. Where does this film set in? You got 5 Indiana Jones films. Place this in order. Where do you put Temple of Doom?
Dead
1, 2, 3, 4,
last.
5. Whoa.
It might be last.
It's 4th for me.
Crystal Skull below for you?
Crystal Skull's below.
Crystal Skull's below.
Okay.
Crystal Skull is a different flavor of racism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We'll see if I change my mind. We'll see if I change.
That's kind of where I'm at. I remember hating Crystal Skull and refusing to acknowledge its existence, and then rewatching it and being like, okay, this actually isn't as bad. If you just pretend Shia LaBeouf isn't there, it's not too bad.
He's so bad in that film. He's like shoved down our throats, and then they get Marion all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like the great travesty of Crystal Skull is what they do to Marion.
Yes, where she's like, oh, he still loves me. It's like she wouldn't care.
Who is this fucking person?
Yeah.
It's not Marion Ravenwood. I'm sorry. It's not her.
Yeah, so I'm
That's the reason why Dial of Destiny, they get it right. She's right back.
Yes.
She's back. She is Raiders. She's Raiders Marion in Dial of Destiny. You can see where she becomes that older, wizened woman.
Okay, now that I've watched Dial of Destiny, when I hadn't yet in the first one, are you ready?
Yes.
Go for it.
Crusade, Raiders.
Wrong.
Dial of Destiny, Crystal Skull. Sorry, Temple of Doom, Crystal Skull.
Okay.
Same.
Okay.
Wait. You went Crusade?
Crusade's number 1.
No. Raiders, Crusade, Raiders 1, Crusade, Dial of Destiny, Temple, Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
All right. We made it in. For the very first time, we've done a podcast shorter than the film itself, which I feel like is actually... We're going to blow that out of the water because I have 2 other guests begging to come on with the 3 of you to do Last Crusade.
Yes.
Thomas Lecoq and John White Greenlee are begging to do a super pod.
Yay, let's do it.
If we watch Crusades, I think Brian is going to make a cameo whether he's invited or not, because that was like his favorite movie. That's what made him fall in love with ancient history and become an ancient historian. So he's probably he's going to not be able to
Maybe with that we just record a watch party where we all watch it together and it's like do our thing. That might be we create a commentary.
Yeah.
Yep.
That'll be how we do that. We'll do something different.
Archaeology Science Theater 3001.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
And that's a wrap here at Historians of the Movies podcast. Thank you so very much to our guests, Kate Sheppard, Julia Troche, and Leah Packard-Grams for being here. Ladies, I love you so very much. There's a reason why I call you guys my sisters. I just adore the three of you so very, very much. Thank you to our producer. Thank you to our... Do I call... Fletcher, can I call you my sidekick? Or I'm going to call you that. Fletcher, thank you so much for being here and making this show run. And of course, thank you to all of you for being part of the HATM community. I love you guys so very, very much. Thanks for sharing this podcast and being part of this. If you like the pod, you can share it on social media or with your friends, or leave us a good review on Apple Podcasts. So we've got a bunch of pods coming your way. I hope you're going to like them all. So ciao for now. Bye.